Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the reawakening of Transition US National Network calls, which used to be a thing and then stopped being a thing for a while, and now is once again, thankfully, a thing. My name is Nils Palsson. I work with Transition US as the communications director. I've also been a grassroots transition initiative founder in rural California, Lake County, Transition Lake County. So did many years of grassroots work there. And now I'm honored to be in service to the entire transition movement and working with people in the 160 plus transition towns across the US. The sort of framing question for our call today is transition, politics, and social justice. Where is the line? And this is a conversation that's come up in a lot of our transition calls and conversations in recent months, especially given the turbulent political times that we're living in. I noticed that when I call people in the transition movement and ask them what they're working on and what they're passionate about, we get a lot of folks who are saying, I'm really passionate about political and social justice activism right now. People who are involved in transition are more and more reporting that they're part of groups like Indivisible, or people were really stoked maybe about Bernie Sanders. That might be something that a lot of transition people are in. And yet at the same time, transition aspires to be nonpartisan, and it is in fact nonpartisan, Transition US being a 501c3. So, we don't do any specific political endorsements, but we notice that people are political. They're engaged in electoral politics. They're engaged in climate demonstrations and doing work with groups like 350.org and Citizens Climate Lobby. And obviously, we're dealing with a really challenging time with our political system right now, with money in politics and with warmongers in politics and with ignorance in politics. And there's a lot of things to unpack there. And we've got a transition movement that is becoming more aware of intersectional justice, and not just in a silo of only being concerned with peak oil and climate change. I mean, our core work is local, on the ground resilience building, and yet we're aware that this work is not happening in a vacuum, and that all these issues that we care about are interrelated. And I see Shaktari is here. She's also agreed to kind of give some opening remarks. I'm coming at this I found transition as an activist. I mean, I've been a peaceful revolutionary my entire adult life, interested in system change, and I never felt empowered to do it, to actually make an impact during my 20s, until I found transition, until I found the transition and permaculture and the ability to dig in locally in my community to create meaningful solutions that were actually impacting lives. So transition found me at just the right time, and I've been really excited about it all along. I've also felt at many times limited in some ways by the work of transition, or at least that, it's great to do the work to build local resilience, and yet there's also this, for me at least, missing piece of how do we connect to the need, at least that I see, for meaningful transformation of the overarching political and economic systems. How are we going to, like Naomi Klein says, capitalism versus the climate. If we're going to do anything to meaningfully impact climate change, we need to take on the drive for endless growth. And this is all me, just one schmo. I'm not speaking as Transition US. I'm speaking as little Nilsy with my thoughts. I have been inspired to run for United States House of Representatives 2 times. I didn't win either time. I came in 3rd in open primaries in California, and that partially informs my journey. And our other convener here, Shaktari, who I'm going to invite to share some opening remarks as well, is an author of many books, including most recently How to Identify Political Species in the Wild, which is a permaculture, transition, and politics book. So Shaktari, if you want to make some opening remarks, and then I'll kind of seed the question, and then we'll start taking a stack and sharing our voices. It's so awesome to see everybody. Shaktari, are you able to bring your mic up?
Yes, it's up. Can you hear me? You can hear me okay? All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm thrilled to be here, first of all. Thank you very much. I have a long history of being an activist also, decades and decades. Got involved in climate change way back in the dark ages and have been teaching and writing books and doing workshops on different aspects of it all that time. Used to teach at Pioneers, all kinds of stuff. One of the things that I noticed in the process of watching where we were going politically was that we weren't standing back and looking through different lenses. And let me see if I can get everybody up. There we go. And I have been I've had this kind of weird career where I started working in the dark ages of computer systems and looking through a whole systems lens and how different things that don't seem connected actually affect each other. And then I applied that to a lot of things my whole life, and started looking at politics that way, became a certified permaculture instructor, started looking at how we can design systems that work with nature. And the transition movement, I was one of the first transition trainers in the US. And the transition movement, is based on permaculture. And so looking through that lens, I asked myself, okay, well, we have a major election coming up. I had just had some major surgery, so I had some time off. And I thought, I think I'll explore through this lens. So because I've been teaching for so long, I've learned that it's more likely that people pay attention to things that are funny. So I produced this book. Here's a copy of it. And I did it in cartoons because that tends to be the way that people actually look and are willing to look at issues, especially if they offer new lenses and new ways of looking at things. And basically what I did is I said, okay, well, let's pretend that we have two species here that looks like humans. One are Homo sapiens, and the others, I'll show you, the others are this guy right here, Homo politicanus. And he tends to veer towards political jobs. So if you, as a voter, wanted to know, again, just trying to bring some humor into this, if you as a voter wanted to know, how do I make decisions that honor all of life and the planet we live on, you would have to know which subspecies or hybrid of your particular version of Homo politicanus is running for office. So that's the joke, that's the premise behind this. But basically, the entire book is based on permaculture principles. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with those principles, but they're really basic, logical things to ask yourself. So, for example, the first one is observe and interact. And so the questions asked are, where does this subject spend most of its time and why? What excites this specimen? Specimen being the Homo politicanus specimen. Based on its verbal communication, can you tell how it focuses its attention and why? These are questions most people don't ask. And I wanted to pull back and use a larger lens. So that's basically what I did. And I literally went through and asked all kinds of questions and looked at different people. And then, of course, I got to have fun naming all the hybrids and subspecies also, because I had to make it funny. So I know we all have stuff to say here, so I'm going to stop there, but I can walk you through some of the questions that were involved if anybody's interested. Again, because it's a new lens and it's a new way of looking at politics and what is it we're actually trying to do here, how are we accomplishing it, and are we accomplishing it? I think permaculture turns out to be an incredibly valuable lens to use in politics. So
Fantastic. Thanks for that little keynote, Shaktari. Super helpful. And yeah, I'm just reporting live from my civics classroom where I teach high school, and maybe fittingly framed by all these words in the background that deal with issues that we're facing right now, including, the many things that people care about in our world right now. In addition to caring about local resilience in a sort of transition and permaculture standpoint, people are caring about economic equality. People are caring about the wider climate picture. We're caring about social justice and transition people. Many of them that I speak with and know personally are involved in open solidarity and activism around things like Standing Rock, Black Lives Matter, immigrant rights. If we could keep going on, women's rights, it's all interconnected and deeply interrelated. And at the same time, we're creating an inclusive transition movement that isn't necessarily wanting to alienate, anybody who has different political views. So that's part of what frames this. And the fact that there are 47 people on this call right now, at least for me, speaks to the fact that this is a conversation worth having. So you probably read some emails that I sent out about this to help this convening. You probably already know some of the framing questions, but they include: how do we affect the greatest change without creating unnecessary division? How do we amplify our work in transition? To what extent are we building bridges actively or openly with these aligned movements? How revolutionary are we as a movement? Or how much should we dial back the militancy or the sort of revolutionary rhetoric to attract the widest constituency? We do want conservatives on board. We do want preppers and libertarians on board. Maybe you're on this call right now and we want to hear from you. So should we dial it back and toe the line? Should we step it up? And something in between perhaps. What is our strategy in transition right now as grassroots transitioners and as a national and global movement of people working to make a meaningful change? So with that, I want to open the floor, and I want to invite Theo and Sylvia to maybe introduce yourselves and identify yourselves. Theo and Sylvia are members of our Collaborative Design Council, which is a volunteer sort of board, a volunteer advisory group of transitioners from around the country. Shaktari is also on the Design Council. I am, and a few other people on this call are. And we're working to sort of be this grassroots leadership in transition. And it's sort of a revolving body of people who are willing to meet every month to help guide the transition forward. So it's not like a top-down pyramid, what does the boss say we should do? It's us guiding the movement, everybody here. And just real quickly before I pass this on to Theo and Sylvia, who will be sort of holding and facilitating the circle. And I will post that question in the chat in just a second. I just want to quickly preview our online summit that's coming up. Many of you are probably already registered for it and deeply aware of it. But Transition US has an online national summit, an online virtual gathering coming up on October 27th. Which is a Saturday, just about a month away. I'm really looking forward to it. Many folks are registered. Actually, it's already got a bigger registration than we anticipated and expected from the beginning. So it's shaping up to be great. So please do mark your calendars. It's a sliding scale registration, so you can host a group watch party in your local transition initiative, as I know many of you are, Shari and others. And you can get your transition group together and watch these great panels and keynotes. We're doing a transition award ceremony, and it's going to be a really good time. We had a national gathering. Many of you were also there for that in Minneapolis this past summer, 2018, or no, was it 20? It was 2017, wasn't it? That was already a year ago. It feels like it was only yesterday because we really, it's amazing to get in the space with each other and really get to know each other. And yet at the same time, there are some limitations when you're doing a national gathering in person that not everyone's going to be able to travel to, maybe because of financial reasons, maybe because of, work, job, family, carbon footprint, wherever you're not there. So we're working on these other means of getting together. So that's part of the rationale for this upcoming online summit. It's a national gathering that we don't need to travel to. So we're all coming together for a day. And folks are really encouraged to register. It's going to be a Zoom call like this. And in addition to that, we're going to continue having these national network calls where we can get together as best we can even though we're in different places, we can see each other's faces. And, you know, like Shaktari, you were my original transition trainer. Like every time I see you, my heart lights up. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys. Please do participate in the October 27th online summit. There's info at transitiongathering.org. And we're planning a summer 2019 in-person transition gathering in Pittsburgh. So a little preview for that. That's on its way too. So without further ado, let's see, Theo, can I toss it to you first and then invite you to, you and Sylvia to take the circle from here? Much gratitude.
Hi, everybody. I'm Theo Talcott in Manchester, Vermont, and I am grateful to be with you all. I would say I actually really appreciate these calls we've been having through the Collaborative Design Council, and this format of getting people from all over the country to come together electronically is pretty like science fiction-y and awesome. So I encourage you all to you know, lean into it and take advantage of it. I'm finding it that our conversations work best when people keep it short and think like Lakota Council, you know, like talking stick. It is very much like a talking stick because it's one person at a time. So with that can come long-windedness. So I encourage people to think about like, you know, 2-minute mark. If we can, that'll get us through like 50 people really feeling like they have space to contribute. And that makes spaces for the quieter voices to come forward, which is, we think is important. The idea of doing like horizontal democracy, like as we do our make a culture, we want it to be democratic as we go. So that's sort of like one of my theories is like, it should be fair as it happens. You know, we have to make a culture in the face of the Armageddon of oil, but as we go, we can demand social justice. We can do it with social justice. And so that's about it for me. I'm going to toss it over to Shaktari. Thanks.
How about Sylvia?
Sylvia.
So I'm Sylvia Holmes. I'm in Pasadena, California. We have Transition Pasadena since 2009. Lots of projects. It's pretty steady and great. I wanted to mention that I went to a college reunion and I met some people from the class of 1968, and they were explaining how all the different movements in that year, like the civil rights and anti-war and women's rights and everything else, was all, they felt that at the time that it was all one movement. It wasn't separate things, which I thought was really interesting because I always thought of them as separate. And I also thought about the Occupy movement and how people complained, oh, they don't have a single mission. Well, maybe it's the same thing. I want to echo what Theo said about being brief, and I hope to hear from all of you. And I'm going to pass the baton. Who would like to speak? Anyone raise your hand? You know how to raise your hand with a little, there's a little button.
Yeah, that's good. If you can raise your hand by pressing the raised hand. Do you see that on the right side by the participants? Otherwise, I don't know, Sylvia, do you think it would be safe to invite people to self-unmute and just kind of work it out that way?
No. I think that might work, honestly. One thing I forgot to mention is that it's important we have this conversation because activist people often don't talk politics because of the whole 501c3 thing. And to be clear, our opponents do not hold themselves very carefully. It's not like the Catholic Church is not going to talk about politics, even though they're 501c3 or whatever. Maybe they're not, but so I think it's really important that we think about how to make a politics that works for people who are fighting for the earth and don't want to be bought.
Can everyone hear me? Hi, I'm Dan Tweed. I'm actually on the ballot for City Council here in Ventura County, Thousand Oaks, California.
Yeah, Dan.
Yay. There's 3 incumbents running, and then myself and I guess 7 others. Well, no, there's 11 total. Anyway, I'm a long shot. I haven't spent any money on my candidacy other than putting up a Facebook page, which you can find under Dan Tweed for Thousand Oaks City Council. But I'm a big permaculture advocate. I think that is the future of our planet, if we're going to have a future. And I want to propose that kind of a long shot project for the 100th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights would be to have a permaculture trail around the world with camping and shelter and freedom of movement and freedom of expression. So 2048, I've got a site called permatrail.org, permaculture trail. And I want, it's half complete if you look at the mileage of all the trails that exist in the world. If we could just double that and interconnect them, we would have a round-the-world human rights, or humane rights, as I like to say, permaculture trail. So vote in November 6th if you're in California or Texas, and I'll pass the baton and take any questions if anyone wants to ask them.
So
Yeah, I
if
have a
you're out there
question.
wanting to share, feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question.
Okay.
What brought you into running for politics, Dan?
Just the travesty of the GOP being in total climate denial, and the Trump phenomenon, the flat Earth phenomenon. I mean, you name it. I think this is a time to just get involved if you haven't been before, because we're really in danger of losing our environment and our democracy and everything else.
I have a question I want to ask everybody. And it's a really simple one, but I think it's at the core of everything. Knowing where we are right now, knowing, about all the climate denial, about all the hyper-capitalism, and the profit above all mentality. What are the questions we're not asking that we need to be asking? And I want to elaborate a little bit more, and not just on a global scale, but within each topic. For example, most of us, I think, involved in transition understand permaculture to some degree, understand the idea of working with nature instead of, demolishing it and controlling everything. But how do we go even beyond that? What are the questions we're not even asking right now that need to be asked in order to actually accomplish our goals? And I leave that open.
Well, the first question I would ask is, what is our goal? And you have to define that, as specifically as possible. The more specifically you can, then the more likely you can make it, real. And may I speak a little longer, please? I'm just jumping into this. I know very little bit about transition movement. I just have an overall feel. Essentially, it's permaculture. I know about permaculture. Permaculture is good. So far as I'm concerned, transition is good. So I'm serious. So I'm just trying to find out really what's going on here. I kind of get emails and I skim it, and if it doesn't jump out and really grab me, it goes somewhere, it gets piled up. But I have a handle on what's going on here. I feel I have a pulse of what's going on here, and I think that it's something that I want to be very much involved with. We are at a very critical time in human history and American history. I've been saying this for many years. Beginning on a local radio station and say the time of change is not coming. The time of change is here. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago. And no, because it's so obvious. If you can see the macro, how everything is just dissolving, how the major systems are crumbling. So if you can see it coming, the best you can do is get out of the way. And that's what I see this to be at minimum. But at best, I'm not too sure where transition is going, because I don't know really what it wants to achieve. Quite honestly, I don't know what the end result is. So I'll leave it at that.
This is Sylvia. I'd like to say that to me, transition is building resilience in your own hometown while having fun. And the part about the fun, I think, is important because so many people, when they see how bad things are, tend to stick their head in the sand. Peace back.
I think that's excellent myself because, you know, I've been working in this town just trying to get people to balance their books and follow procedures. And I mean, and they won't do that, and no one even seems to care. So, you know, trying to interact with the public and get them involved and explain to them what the situation is, I believe is the problem in itself. Because how do you really approach someone about something which to me everyone is in obvious denial of? Now, maybe you don't feel that way, but that's what I get, you know, from this ground zero here. Now, I realize in other parts of the country it's not the same.
I guess I try to work with people who are actually awake and keep working towards things that are actually working. Peace back.
This is Shari from Transition Town Media PA near Philadelphia. I just wanted to address some of what people have been saying, and especially Nils' question about how do we affect the greatest change without creating unnecessary division. And I think that creating unnecessary division is key. I think if we work towards creating community by working together on projects and positive actions that we can all agree on, then that can create change not only by the actual things that we're doing, but by creating a space where people can really communicate and learn that we're not really as different or divided as it may seem. Peace back.
I have a question with my feedback, and that is, give me an example of something that you would want to do. You know, what is it? You know, I want something tangible here. You know, what would you present?
Well, I think there's a million things we can do.
Please, just one.
One of the things that we're doing in media is we're helping the borough come up with a curbside composting program. And it's amazing how many people think it's a great idea to compost their kitchen scraps instead of adding it to their trash. You know, another one is doing a solarized program. Another one, we have a free store in media where people can come and drop off things they don't want anymore, and other people can take them for free. So there's a million things we can do and create community that way.
Okay.
Respect.
Yeah, each one is like you're modeling what the world you want to exist just by having a project that people can actually see and participate in. Peace back.
This is Shaktari. Everything we're saying is so important to me. And I want to, the first question was, you know, what are the questions we're not asking? And and then the answer was, what are our goals? And I think there are a lot of goals. You can break it down according to each of those projects that you're setting up locally that help people work together regardless of their political beliefs and actually generate the feeling of community. From a whole system standpoint, one of the things that I see constantly missing from our created models of what we're doing is the feedback loops to know whether we're actually accomplishing what we say our goals are. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask all of us here who are active in transition is, what feedback loops are you creating, or can you conceive of creating, that let you know that you're actually accomplishing what you intend to do with regards to creating community and closing the divide between different political beliefs or different, you know, socioeconomic backgrounds, etc., with regards to the actual topic that you're working on, and whether it's actually accomplishing what you intended. There's a lot of ways to look at that. But if you were designing a system to work, what feedback loops would you put into that, and how would you go about doing that? And I'll unmute, and I'll mute, and whoever wants to answer first, please unmute.
Theo, are you watching the stack?
I'm not really seeing where the stack is.
Okay, well, and just a quick logistical point, and celebrating that we have over 50 people on this call, which is great. If you are new to Zoom, you can bring your little cursor arrow to the bottom of the screen, and there's a button participants, and that should pop out a little thing on the right side that will show everybody on the call. If you hover over your name, there should be a place there to indicate raise hand. You can also press the chat at the very bottom on that bottom bar. If you press chat, you'll see that a chat is happening here where people are writing things with each other. So far at Wilmington and Delaware has their hand raised, Wilmington in transition. And I wasn't sure, there's another hand next to Jennifer Carley's name. I don't know if that was a clapping hand or a hand raised, but we'll take Wilmington, then Jennifer, and then Thumbs Cassidy.
Okay, but before we jump, I want to do a sort of facilitator thing saying, we're half an hour in. I'm encouraging people who have spoken a lot already now just to sort of hold it, and so we can get some of the other voices onto the table. Thank you.
Also, another quick thing, this is William over in Palo Alto. If you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand, do *9.
Thank you, William. Okay, so, and it looks like Jennifer was just clapping. So we've got Wilmington followed by Thumbs Cassidy. Wilmington, you're up.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Loud and clear.
In response to the first question that I'm Laura from Wilmington and Transition, Wilmington, Delaware. The first question that Shaktari posed about what questions are we not asking, I think hearkening back to one of her opening commentaries about, the political engagement with capitalism versus, the biosphere. I think a lot of us, people have different views about our economic system, but in terms of an extraction-based endless growth paradigm, I think we can pretty much all agree that that's not working. So the question that I'm trying to wrestle with in terms of more social unity and building community is how do we talk to people who haven't ever given any thought about alternative economic paradigms that are very interested in doing better in the capitalist economy? What enticements can we show them? How do we demonstrate successfully, politically or apolitically or non-politically, why the extraction-based, growth-based, have more economy is not really a preferable choice? How do we persuade or demonstrate a more sharing economy is a better choice to people who've never given it any thought and are completely, brainwashed to want to consume ever more? I'm not being very succinct, but that's the question. It's like, how do we show the way to people who are not even seeing that as an option? How do we, I know the free store is very popular when we do one here, but we need a much wider reach to get with all the diverse groups of all political stripes, to get people to willingly live with less stuff. And that's the question I'm not sure that we're asking, or not asking it well, perhaps. Any recommendations would be great. Peace back.
Okay, we've got Thumbs followed by the 970 area code.
Checking in from thumbs. Can I get a thumbs up from one of the facilitators that the audio is okay? Great. All right. Setting my timer so that I don't get too verbose. All right. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is so great to share space with y'all. So I'm wanting to build bridges with the Transition Network. So I work with the eco-villages and intentional communities of North America through the Global Eco-Village Network. I'm part of the Federation for Egalitarian Communes, the Fellowship for Intentional Communities. And so I want to build more bridges because we have maybe kind of the opposite issue sometimes in the communities movement is we have all these little utopias we've built, right? And they become echo chambers where kind of you end up flying away from the rest of society and living in your own completely finance sharing, permaculture building bubble and not really giving as much as you can to the bigger movement. And so, yeah, we have, you know, so many skilled builders here, like these whole villages of people who can build villages, whether, you know, it's with a professional degree or not. It just comes from a life of service and experience. And I can mobilize these people, you know, so I travel entirely through the gift economy, just writing in the abundance of communities. They have abundant materials, they have abundant wealth. I mean, once you start sharing, there's a lot of surplus that's not available for people who are fending for themselves or their own small family. And so in this coming year, I'm just trying to reach out to more ways that we can mobilize these the builders of the communes and such to descend into your various more urban programs and get to kind of cross-pollinate what we have to share and learn from what you all have to share as well. So I'm kind of coming with that offering, and yeah, I'm gonna set down the mic for now. So.
Okay, 970. Is that Marissa?
No, it's Janice.
Oh, hey, Janice.
Hi. Yeah, same area code. I'm Janice from Fort Collins, Colorado, and I sort of transitioned out of doing transformational healing work in various different settings into social activism, just because I needed to get out of the inner world and go into the external world. So in terms of what question we're not asking, I think we are asking it, but not in a very directed, very clear way. And that is, what kind of world do we want to create? What I learned to do in transformational healing was to actually do very exacting visualizations of what I wanted to create, which is a very powerful practice in terms of my ability to actually create something. So if there were a way to do that as a whole transition movement, that would be a good thing to do. I know my city is doing that. They actually have a visioning process for the whole city. And of course, it looks different when you do it in the external world than if you can just do it individually. But I think that question is sort of aligned with the idea of setting goals, but it's a little different in the sense that you're mobilizing another part of your mind, in my opinion, than the goal-setting mind. So that's all I have to say about that. Thanks. Bye.
So the mic is here for anybody who wants it.
I've got another comment. I typed it in the chat about amateur radio is a great way to get to know your community and to be more resilient. It's very easy to do now. It's just a 50-question test. You can get these Chinese radios for about 40, 50 bucks that let you talk around the world using repeaters. And it's you might think, why do I need that? I've got cell phones. Well, cell phones will quickly overload if everyone's trying to use them. So that it's really a preparedness and community resilience kind of resource. So that's the end of that, my comment on that.
Great. Looks like Daryl followed by the 770 area code.
Mute. Hi there, everyone. My name's Daryl, and I'm originally from New Zealand. Came here in the 90s. I was originally involved with Transition Liberty New York, and then I came down to Richmond, Virginia, and I've been involved with Transition Richmond for a while. We're kind of a mullah group. We're down to only a few members now, but we're hoping to boost that. And yeah, I'm interested in getting our group more people interested in transition in Richmond area. And yeah, I live in a tiny house. You can see in my background is my kitchen. Yeah, it's trying to get people involved and interested in transition. I'm interested in learning about that and how to do that. I sat in on the transition training the other day, and probably going to keep doing that, and just keep learning. Thank you.
$770 and then Dolores. All right, 770, I've unmuted you, so you should be able to speak now. All right, let's pass it on to Dolores. Dolores followed by Karen.
Okay, one of the things that we do here is connect with groups that are trying to build resilience. There's quite a bit. I'm in Missoula, Montana, sorry. There are a lot of people that have projects going here, and local businesses, farmers markets, issues that have to do with building resilience within a community. So like advertising those and being a part of them and working with the kinds of things that build a sustainable and resilient community is something fun and easy to do many times. And then also the Transition Streets program is one way to bring, close people together to talk about some of the issues that would help them realize that overconsumption is not necessarily the only way you have to go. And then I think the third thing I wanted to mention is the zero waste kind of idea, where you're trying not to just throw stuff into the landfill, like call your trash can the landfill instead of the trash can, and begin to think that the things that you buy, the things that you have, need to go someplace useful, or maybe you need to figure out how not to have to, use a ton of plastic bags and things like that. So it's part of looking at zero waste ideas too that helps reduce the overconsumption. And we have a local professor here at the university that's written a book on zero waste, and he's a real champion. So drawing on your local resources, you may find that there's other people that would really be good to help get the message across to people through other organizations. And then I had one question, and that is, if we're a 501c3, we still can support legislation, right? It's just candidates that we can't. That's the way it used to be, as if it changed. And back at you. I don't know what you guys were saying. Back at you.
This is Shari. Yes, that's correct, Dolores, about the 501c3. You're right.
So we did support a initiative for renewable energy here in Montana and worked on that some as a transition group.
Let's see, it looks like we've got Karen up next on the stack.
I wasn't sure if I could unmute myself or not. So this is a really interesting conversation. And so there's a couple things. One is when somebody talked about, so how can we persuade people not to buy so much stuff? It seems to me one of the groups to join then might be the minimalists and the tiny house people. And so, I mean, there are movements like that. So, I mean, I think when you were talking about joining together groups, I think that would be really important, is, you know, to find where we have commonalities and then join them both at the national level and at the local level. And then the other thing that's tricky about transition is there's so many different priorities. I mean, when somebody asks, what are you trying to do? It's like kind of like everything. And so it's like, and I know there's different teams working on different things, so that might be good. But another thing would be to make sure that all the members kind of have like resource lists, like when Thumbs was talking about the communities and intentional communities. It's like, so make sure everybody has that resource list so that we know who's in town and who's in the area, so that we can connect with them and stuff. So kind of building up some interconnections, I think, would be good.
See, Mike Albert.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Cool, hello. Yes, I'm glad this conversation is happening. These are some really good questions that are coming up. I've actually not been involved in any transition initiatives, but I'm a PhD student. I study international relations and sustainability movement for a while. I can and get involved. So I mean, one thing that I'm interested in kind of asking, I mean, I think it's really important, this question, what are the questions we need to be asking, or what haven't we been asking? And there's a lot, I think. But one thing that I'm kind of interested in, and I think this question does get raised, and I think it's something we can think, maybe try and think more clearly about, more concretely. And so that question is, what are we going to do, or what can we strategies can be adopted? Because I think, you know, we need to be anticipatory. You know, what can we do now to get people to change their consumption habits? You know, I mean, I think we need to be modest with what we can really accomplish with a broad condition. Expect that, I mean, you know, for anyone who's paying attention right now to, you know, the global economy and, you know, the financial system, the energy, we know that there's a very high chance that within the next 3-5 years, obviously, you know, we can't ever predict these things with precision, but we know that another major crisis comparable to 2007, 2008 is going to happen. And this one might be far worse. It might not be stabilized in the way that it was in 2007. We could even see something like a 1930s style Great Depression like crisis. And so we need to be I think we need to think about, you know, what can we do? You know, what kind of events, what kind of things can we organize, you know, communications, other things, you know, to try and enhance the visibility of the movement, to get more people to recognize, well, here's an alternative way to live based more on cooperation, you know, local sharing economies, you know, living sustainably. And so a lot of this happened, you know, in the 1930s Great Depression, where you began to see a movement towards these kind of communities where the trend had been towards individualism, consumerism, selfish greed, but then there was a shift. And so I think the conditions for such a shift are going to be in place soon, and I think we need to think about what can we do to try and push that, to be part of that. Transition's got to play, it's got to have an important role in that process. So what can we do? Yeah, that's something I think we can think more concretely about. Sorry for going on, but that's all I had to say.
No, that was an awesome share. Thank you for that. All of your shares are very beautiful so far, and I'm appreciating that we have this space. Rita, I'm about to call on you. I just want to say, if folks haven't popped out the chat, if you hover on the bottom and click the chat button, people are sharing all sorts of great resources in the chat window and websites that are related to this. So if you're saying stuff in the chat and you want to participate, feel free to raise your hand and you can speak some of these things out. But otherwise, I want folks to know that that's there. People are putting great things in the intentional community map directory from Thumbs Cassidy, and links to community rights and several other organizing resources. So I'll pass it on to Rita, and we'll start a new stack from there. Awesome to have you here, guys.
Oh, I'm muted. Oops. Okay, you unmuted me, right? Okay. This is a question that we're all struggling so hard with, and I have joined the phone calls with the inner resilience group, and there was a small number of us at the last call, and some of the things that came out of that discussion was a recognition of a deep alienation that people have. There's a loneliness that's very rampant, and you can be wealthy and still be very lonely. And we were identifying what that is. It's a lack of deep sharing of where you really are on the deepest level, and we experimented with it together ourselves, and boy, was that a powerful call. I wrote about it in the chat, so let me see what I said. But I practice it with one of us in Philadelphia, Transition Philadelphia, and we do it on our phone calls. Every time we're talking, we move into this conversation style, which is like we're one brain with expanded into two heads, and we're talking about things, and it has a very different feel from some of the conversations that we have when we run into conflict, and how to go past that into this deep place where insights that neither of us thought of before start pouring out. It's a place fertile for creativity. And when we're thinking in terms of unleashing the genius, I've just, since the phone call, realized that's the birthplace, or where they're conceived. It's not the place where they're actually manifested completely, but if we could relate and bring that deep relationship into our work, it opens the door to that. And I think that's a very new thing. I mean, everybody on that call recognized loneliness as part of our life. And we find it healed when we're working on these things together at this level. And it means it's including our whole self, heart, mind, brain, soul, all of it, and not on the surface. So that's what I wanted to share. I would like to add, I'm muted now. I can't unmute. Oh, I am not muted. I forgot what I was going to say. I thought it was important. I think it brings it together, and it invites all when we do this. people aren't all going to respond right away, but it opens the door to transformation in people. It really is powerful. I think I'll end there.
Sitting in the fertile silence. Maybe if you have if anyone out there has like a brewing desire to speak, even just to be seen as another member of the community here, I would add to this conversation a question of, like, who are you and what drew you to this call? Why does it seem like an important conversation to have? And to what extent do we need to be getting political or be getting more explicitly aligned with social justice movements and other aligned movements as transitioners? Go toward that or go away from that? What do you think? Layla, then Jane.
Yeah, hi, Layla here, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, I was drawn to this call because I think we, as a movement, are struggling somewhat since 2017. I think that it could have gone either way. It could have gone like, a climate denier slash sexist slash like multiple issues gets into the presidency and people have flocked to our movement. But I think instead our movement is it might not be strong enough or like political enough. And at least our local movement lost a lot of members right around 2017, the beginning of 2017. And just talking to people who have left, I mean, they're not gone, they're just not coming around to our activities anymore. They're getting more involved in like 350.org and Sierra Club and the groups that are doing more political work that are working against the kind of really damaging legislation that is happening in our country. And so that's, I think, one of the issues that's come up with regards to transition. And then just personally, I've done that as well. I've just I've gotten more politically involved, more involved in justice organizing. I'm still super involved in transition, but it's I've had to split my time because we have just major issues to work with. And so like there's a local movement here for like a democracy vouchers system that would really counterbalance the dark money super PAC kind of campaign financing. Just in our city elections, we're starting small. It's something that Seattle did, and we're trying to follow. So that's like taken up a lot of my time, and just a lot of other transitioners are just spending their time on other with other movements like public banking. I was trying to think of them, I was writing them down. Workers' rights, immigrant support centers. In New Mexico, we've had a huge issue with immigrant rights and separation of families. There's water rights with water factors, and then we still have our little like permablitzes and stuff going on, but it just doesn't feel as urgent as some of the like huge injustices that are happening right now. Like doing our little like water harvesting gardens and stuff is wonderful, and it feels great, but it just doesn't feel as urgent as like putting families back together. I just want to bring up that like dichotomy.
We've got Jane followed by Laura. Oh, and a quick reminder to our telephone participants. William mentioned this earlier, but if you're on the phone and you would like to raise your hand, you may press *9 to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you when I call on.
Hi, I'm Jane, and I'm with a new transition initiative in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which is outside Philadelphia. Hi. So the messy SCOTUS process that we've been going through in the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh has highlighted to me that, and I think to many people, that patriarchy and hyper masculinity are central to our system. And the connection that I see is that it parallels the domination, extractive nature of capitalism. And that's what stands out to me. And so I'm just wondering, how could we use something like this to promote an alternative? And that's my question.
Thank you, Jane. Laura, and then the 650, I think that's William.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Laura Morris. On Facebook, I've talked to you, Nils, as Laura J. Irwin. I volunteer with Movement for a People's Party, and Theo and I are both state leads for the organization. I'm in Maine. Theo's in Vermont. And we talked about me coming on the call, and I did a little bit of reading about Transition US before I came on the call. And as with my reading and listening to you guys, and it's kind of related to what, is it Layla? Okay, kind of related to what she was saying. Because I've had my head buried in political activism for 2 years, to listen to you guys talk and read about transition initiatives, I realized that I am at the bottom of like a Maslow's hierarchy, and you guys are at the top. And it's so nice to hear people talk about, doing things in their town that bring people together, because it's so different from how I spend all my time. I don't know if for people that are not familiar with Movement for a People's Party, we're organizing outside of the establishment, 100% outside of the establishment. And we have a platform that's been drafted by all of our members, because we're committed to building a broad coalition of groups and individuals and parties and unions that is run in a completely democratic fashion. We vote on everything. People participate in organizing calls like this. And they've put together a platform that resembles the Green Party, except we have a much healthier economic section to our platform. So the question that you start with, that Shaktari started with, and where I am, like, what can we do without causing division? I can't really answer that, because what I do, by the nature of what I do, causes many people to become very upset. When we talk about organizing outside of both establishment parties, people can become apoplectic about it. They're really afraid. But what we stand on is research and analysis and history and we're not a movement that's just, people just talking, just out from the rhetoric of the moment. There's real meat to what we're doing. And so I'm here hoping that Transition US will find a way maybe to, stay true to their mission of, building resilience and community and things like that, and maybe find a way to join us with what we do. But it's not comfortable. So I just want to throw that out there, and that's why I'm on the call.
Thanks, Laura. Let's see, we got William, and then Theo, I'll add you to the stack.
Cool. Thanks, Nils. This is William with Transition Palo Alto over in California. One of the things that I was the other having a conversation about permaculture design with some folks, the ethics of permaculture design are earth care and people care and fair share, which the first couple are fairly self-express and sharing it around, within your community and you're not just eking out a living. Your goal is to be producing more than you need so that you can support other folks. And that and the earth care aspects get a lot of attention. And one of the things that gets mentioned in the permaculture community is the aspect of care. And I think that is, I think that social justice is clearly mandated in that. And that as the transition community, it's firmly in permaculture design, that also clearly needs to be part of it. And there is this ongoing conversation about being involved with social justice, and do we, is that something that we should be involved with? And there's obviously tension between, if we focus on social justice and we don't focus on environmental issues, there will not be a need for social justice anymore. If we focus on environmental issues and not social justice issues, then we preserve the environment, we preserve the world that we live on, but we also preserve potentially preserve the social structures that we already have. And there are a lot of folks who are really resistant to the idea that, well, we're going to all collaborate to save the planet, but my people are still going to be slaves. My people are still going to be cleaning your toilets. My people are still going to be, we want to be part of the transition, but we want it to be a real, like a genuine transition into something completely new that we haven't seen. And I think the question that we started this off with, what are the questions that we are not asking, or that our eyes kind of slide past because, either we don't want to look at them or we don't even think to look at them, may be extremely obvious to folks who are brand new to the movement or just on the periphery, looking in, those folks who are on the edges, and I say edges in a very positive. Those of you who work in permaculture design know that, we talk about the fertile edges where different communities meet each other, and on the edge you have natives of one community, natives of another community, and also folks who specialize on the edge and who like being there. And I think you need all those things in order to ask those questions. So kind of a long way of saying I would also love to hear from folks who might be on the call, might be brand new to transition towns, might be thinking, well, I don't really, there are a lot of veteran folk here. There are a lot of folk here who've been involved in this for years, but those of us who've been involved in this for a long time really need to hear, because there are things that we could be looking straight at and not seeing them because we walk by them every single day and we're just used to them being there. So please offer your voices into this conversation, and I will also own that I'm part of the Collaborative Design Council, and so have an agenda in wanting to hear from as wide an array of voices as possible. Peace back.
All right, let's see. I see you, Kathleen, so I'm adding you. We've got Theo up next, followed by Ash, Claire, and then I'll add you, Kathleen, before myself, and then Davey D. I see you too. Okay. So Theo, you're up.
Thanks, Nils. Yeah, so to follow up with what Laura was talking about the movement for a People's Party, this is really an impressive organization. They've really come a long way in a year, and I encourage you all to get involved with it. In the spirit of like transition, where like, if something's not working, then, start a group and get on with it and do some work on it. And that group has done a lot of that. I think you'll find the platform has got a lot of transition town ideas, including some from the guy from Zeitgeist. And I think like a lot of us saw during the Bernie Sanders campaign that like there are solutions to so many of the problems that are out there, and we're just like getting like, locked out by the oil companies. And so, as we say, like we're not obliged to participate in wickedness. People, groups that want our love and attention, like the Democratic Party, should stop taking money from fossil fuel companies. The DNC just said they're going to like take money from the fossil fuel companies. Like how can they represent us? Right now they're pushing fracking all over the country. It's a huge like war being made on America's water, and we have to oppose it. And I just don't think there's any way to do that other than get another party up that's going to like resist at length. So I won't like go at length much longer about the People's Party, but I do encourage people to look and get involved with that. I don't know if anyone watched the Global Climate Action Summit out in California, but all the politicians sound like you guys. I don't know if you knew Michael Bloomberg is a climate champion, but he is. And so is Jerry Brown, and so is John Kerry, and so are all these people. And so I wonder if in terms of I heard someone say once, like, your movement is won when the politicians steal your language. And I feel like the climate movement could take a bow now and say, hey, the politicians are like getting some of the language right. So in terms of like what transition can do for politics is I think we still have to keep dreaming for the future we want. Our ideas are more powerful than ever. We have more people are interested in fighting for the planet. And yeah, I'll toss it back there. Peace back.
All right, Ash, you're up, followed by Claire.
Thank you, Nils. Really appreciate that. So my name's Ashwani Vasisht. I'm a professor in sustainability in northern New Jersey. I'm not part of a transition movement, but I teach a course called Energy and Society. And that's centrally concerned with the issues that transition is concerned with. So I use the word process in a light way, about 20, 25 students a semester through my course. And they all learn about the transition network and the movement, all of them. Okay, I teach systems approach and systems thinking, and whether you're at the edge of the system or in the heart of it, one of the things you have to recognize is that although not everything is connected to everything else, you can draw a connection from anywhere to anywhere. That's a system, right? If that's true, then how can you do transition work without getting involved in social movements? right? How do you change the system, which is grounded on fossil fuels, without changing the system itself? So there's this idea that Kessler came up with called type 3 errors. Type 3 errors are errors when you ask the wrong question. So I would suggest to you that maybe it's the wrong question to ask, should we get involved with social justice issues? But the question is, how do we tie all these movements together and focus them on the central issue facing all of us, in my opinion, which is climate change, carbon, and carbon capture, right? So I used to have, I use these magnetic bumper stickers on my car because I keep moving them around. And it's easier to do with magnetic bumper stickers than with sticky ones. And I used to have a bumper sticker for a long time on my car that said, tax carbon, not wages. I have some really radical people in my class, radical from my point of view, who believe that taxation is evil in any form. So I say to them, okay, suppose I tax, you pay $3, $3.20 a gallon for gasoline. I had this happen in class today. And a kid pushed back on me really heavy on the idea that I might want to charge $15 a gallon for gasoline, right? So I said to him, okay, what if I gave you a choice? I give you a choice between paying $15 a gallon for gasoline, paying no income tax, having free education in college, and free healthcare. Would you then go for the $15 a gallon gasoline? He said, yeah, sure I would. It's framing. It's framing. It's getting folks where they count, and it's talking to them in the language that they understand. And that's the piece that I wanted to sort of add to this conversation, that the transition movement is a solid idea. Whether you're doing transition work or not is a matter of definition. Okay? If you say you're doing transition work, you are. It's that simple. Whether you're doing political work, whether you're doing third-party work, whether you're doing carbon taxes work, whether you're doing anything, if it's focused on transition, it's transition work. I have gotten the students to start a divestment movement on our campus to get the foundation divested from fossil fuels. That's transition work too. We don't have a transition Ramapo movement yet, but we're doing transition work. We're moving away from fossil fuels. So I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Woo, beautiful. Claire is up next, and then Kathleen.
I'd like to build on what Ash was just saying, and also the fellow who's talking about permaculture. I posted in the chat a little bit about the new economy movement, and I went to a new economy meeting this summer, 200 communities across the country, and many of them are also transitions groups. So this new economy movement is emerging of social justice and transitions, mostly led by people of color, mostly led by people who are dealing with crisis on the front line, like serious gentrification and disrupting housing. And they feel that, of course, it's if you dig deeper underneath the surface issues, it's economics, you know, and what is the economy? So looking at transitions, well, it's not only transitions from fossil fuels, it's transitions from extractive economies and disinvestment from extraction and reinvestment in local economic democracy and local development, which is also carbon more effective to have a local economy. So you look at something like the prison system that's making a bunch of money off of incarcerating immigrants, you know, that is extraction economy. You know, you look at speculation, real estate speculation that causes homelessness, that's an extractive economy. So one of the images that was put forward at this event, I just loved it. It came from the disinvestment reinvestment movement of students. And so one side of it was the disinvestment work. And then they called it a values filter. And it was like a water filter system of natural reeds and things like that. But what are the values that we want to use to filter how we use our collective resources? And that values filter then threaded investment in cooperative development, economic democracy on the local level, and whatever kind of, transitions work that you might do to disinvest out locally, like solar panels or whatever. To me, that merging of those two movements is the most powerful thing, and I've been a political activist since the 70s. That's the most powerful thing I've seen in a really long time, and that's what I'm trying to do here in Eugene, Oregon, where I'm from. Thanks. Neweconomy.net is their website.
Thank you for that. Transition definitely proven with the New Economy Coalition and a part of that organization. Let's see, we've got Kathleen up next.
So I do the unmuting? All right, I did it. Dion, thank you so much. I wish that I could be in sequence with what everyone else said, but I'm afraid I can't, so I'm a little disjointed. I've been involved with Transition Town Media with Shari Stuber for a few years, and it was enlightening for me. Transition Town was my entrance into what's real about what's happening in the world. So in those few years, I look at Transition Town as the place to go to learn about the more beautiful world that I know is possible. It's where they do things, positive things. We have a time bank. We work on solarization. We meet for potluck dinners. We do the things that we see as being positive. But I've also found the need to protest, like what's happening, to be involved in the various protests. So I've done them both. I feel like I'm working from both ends. I think that's what our speaker from the People's Party said. She's at the other end. But since the Trump election, I feel like there's this whole new realm to be working in, the most important realm. It's this middle realm. It's the middle world. It's the what do I know that other people don't know? Why am I so informed when others aren't? What can I do about that? How can I change that? I know people who don't vote at all. I know people who think Trump is great. I really do. And I don't understand. I don't personally myself know how to make a difference. So the reason I raised my hands was not to complain and say I don't know anything. It's because Charles Eisenstein just published another book. I don't know how familiar you guys are with him. He wrote The More Beautiful World We All Know Is Possible. I'm going to hold his new book up, see if I can get it on the screen. Can you see what it says? Okay. It's Climate, a New Story. And I haven't read it yet. It was just published last week. But he's been investigating my question. Like, what's happening? Why don't so many people know what's happening? So he looks at that from all the different points of view. I hear that there's a whole chapter on the perspective of the climate change denier. So I can't wait to get there. So I just wanted to add that part to what we're talking about. There's more than the two ends. It's not just, permaculture for people, right? Everybody's involved, a more beautiful world for everyone, a world that works for everyone. I think that's the way when I look at social justice or people, permaculture for people, it's a world that works for everyone. That's the way I see that. But for me now, I feel like I need to work in this middle world. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Good night, Joel.
Thanks for sharing your wonderful voice, all of you. This is fantastic. We got just over a half an hour left on this call. The stack is currently myself with a quick share, Davey D, followed by Shaktari, and anyone else out there, feel free to raise your hand. If you're a phone participant, *9. Gosh, I mean, I feel like there's so much to say. One of the things that initially sparked me wanting to have this conversation was last year when I was making transition, the last 2 years actually, like I do a lot of different things for Transition US, and one of the things is calling up previous donors. I don't know if you like are aware of how small a nonprofit Transition is. Like, definitely not nonprofit industrial complex stuff. We're talking 4 people working less than 2 full-time employee hours, like trying to serve this entire movement of people doing awesome work all around the country, like you guys. And so, you know, I help our co-director Caroline making some phone calls and saying, "Oh, thanks for supporting us last year, and are you willing to support us this year?" And the last couple of years, everyone's like, 2 years ago was, "Oh, I'm giving all my money to Bernie." That's what people were saying. Or like, you know, I've been focusing a lot of my money on political things, and people kind of shared the political causes that they're involved in. And I started working for Transition at the same time that I started running for Congress for the first time 3 years ago. So I just wanted to, you know, state that there's this kind of like, there is a fundamental ideological kindredness, I believe, between Transition and, for example, Movement for a People's Party, which I'm very closely tracking, and even the Green Party platform. I ran the first time as a Democrat, and it's like what the sort of like the Bernie blue Democrats could potentially be someday is amazing if we get this cursed money out of politics. But it may be, you know, maybe that it's an additional party that we're needing to create. I don't have the answer on that. I'm curious where the intersections are between Transition and this world of broader political questions. Also, at the Transition National Gathering in Minneapolis, Richard Heinberg gave a talk, and you know he's written extensively on peak oil, and you know, senior fellow at the Post Carbon Institute, and it provoked a lot of questions from the crowd about, you know, how we're going to recognize intersectional justice and not totally focus only on climate change, but recognize that, and maybe this is similar to what Ash was saying, you know, we can focus on one issue, and that is the movement of movements, and the climate and what we're doing to our world maybe epitomizes it, but it's not the be all and end all. So many things I want to let someone else speak. I guess a question that I have, someone said recently, we have this transition communications group where we're working on ways of scaling up our communications and getting transition out to the 100th monkey. We're going to be launching a new website on October 27th at the same time that we have this online summit. And we're working on recruiting people to be bloggers and content creators. If you're out there doing awesome work, hopefully you'll consider being a content creator. But on one of these communications calls, we're working on like really boiling down what Transition US, what our role is in this wider movement ecosystem. And we're talking about, you know, how we're going to language things. Are we trying to appeal to people who are all like ready to go for climate and for economic and social justice? How much are we phrasing things in a way that keeps it open for, you know, more conservative leaning folks to jump on board as well? And someone made the point, man, if we just, transition's not known by people out there, like the way we could be, the way we have the potential to be. And if transition was known by more people, it would do some serious, you know, like amazing scaling up. And someone said, if we just got 20% of the Bernie people to be aware of transition, we would be in good shape. You know, and that strikes me, you know, it's like, yeah, maybe finding a way to portray transition more to like, maybe that's our low hanging fruit, Movement for a People's Party, green folks, like the Bernie army. And then, so to what extent do we do that? And to what extent, you know, are we leaving conservative and libertarian folks out in the cold if we do that? So just maybe stoking the fire with some more questions. I'm also curious, Layla, what you said about, you know, the work you're doing around family reunification, and are in your transition groups out there in your respective communities, how much are your transition towns promoting these other projects like family reunification, like, you know, anti-fracking over in the Rockies or wherever you happen to be? So I'll pass it on. We got Davy D, Shaktari, and anyone else who cares to raise your hand. Sylvia, Davy D, Shaktari, Sylvia.
My turn? Okay. Yeah, this is wonderful. Like I said, I'm just getting my feet wet in this and just kind of getting a sense of where you all are at and where this is going. I believe that it is very much in its infancy, and I see it has a lot of potential. The issue of, to me, economic parity is very important, and that kind of transcends a whole bunch of things. Part of the reason why I got involved in this was because of a concept that I came up with here in this community that they're not interested in. And essentially, I'll just throw it out there, it would be basically creating a eHarmony for people to network and create intentional communities, LLCs, in a way of, you'd have a form, you fill it out with your likes and dislikes and get people to network this way and give them the tools to do it. It's really not that complicated. And this way you have folks who can actually live and work together, putting forth transition. Other than that, I think that the movement here is alive and well. I think it will evolve as time goes on. I remember going to a workshop by the Friends in San Francisco, and essentially it was about the Vietnam movement. And the cut to the chase, it was, movements just go on and on. I mean, and sometimes they come to a completion, and with Vietnam, it just kind of fizzled out. And people were, you might say, disappointed because there was never really a finality to it. But as far as the transition movement right now, and I'll cut it off really quickly, I think Dan has the right idea, and that is people should just jump into the political arena, start running for office, create a platform built on permaculture, and pray that you don't win. You just want to go out there and do a PR and get a movement going and get some people behind you, and then the second time you'll knock it out of the park. So that's all I have to say for today, and looking forward to our next meeting.
Okay, now I'm off mute. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay. God, you guys are incredible. I love all these ideas. Ash, thank you for bringing up whole systems again and how that all meshes together and how when edges meet, that's where the most alive, creative ideas come from. And I want to just briefly go back to the need for looking from a micro standpoint to a macro standpoint. I know a lot of us are politically involved in things that we're passionate about. And because it's whole systems, we have to look at what's actually happening under our feet locally and more broadly. One of the things we keep talking about here is how do we communicate with people who don't agree with us, who have very strict perceptual filters. And I define that as your thoughts, your beliefs, and your experiences that literally blind you from seeing other things that are happening in the world and right in front of you. My art students did it. Everybody does it. We all do it. We all do it. So how do we connect, especially as people become more and more vehemently righteous about their lens? And that's the micro level. So there's a level of the work we're doing that has to be with a willingness to listen, to understand people, and to get beyond the data they're saying to just simply asking questions and connecting. And that's step number one. And it really doesn't matter what the topic is. If we can't do that, we're really in big trouble. So I would like to propose that that is one place where a lot of our energy needs to go, even if, at least for those of us who are willing. It's also, I'll tell you, really fun. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world because I get to expand my perceptual filters also. And I get to meet incredible people who are caring. That's why they're so passionate to begin with. We just see through different lenses. So yes, that and the macro. And touching people so that we actually are working finally within our passions. So I often find people who approach things very differently than I do, but they're passionate about it, as passionate as I am. So again, if I can get to that point where we are connecting and hearing each other, then we can start really playing. And that's where we do collaborative, creative stuff and find out all the gifts people have, all the creative stuff they have brewing inside them, and all the ideas. I don't know how many of you guys have ideas that you've been trying to get out there in the world for the last umpteen zillion decades, but I sure do, and a lot of people do. And yet, it's hard to get that going because it's very hard to find that underlying support. So any way that we can start connecting individually and working together. I don't remember who it was that was talking about working in eco-villages and how blessed that was an experience, because everybody's working together and there's all these people that already know how to do so many things working together. So it's a very rich, wealthy environment, even though from the standpoint of our culture, they might not look wealthy, right? And then I wanted to just bring in, there's so many things happening. We are surrounded by magical things happening all over the world that we don't hear about all the time. There's biomimicry. Whoever it was that was living in Montana, you got the Biomimicry Institute right there. There is magic going on everywhere, and there are so many approaches to take. I love this idea of eHarmony. I'd like to hear more about it. I think there are ways that we need to not only connect between us who share our common passions, but especially ways to connect between those of us who don't, because that's where our work really is. And that's also where the juice is, really. That's where the love, the compassion, I don't know, I find it so incredibly fun. So I want to invite everyone to work at the micro and the macro. And any way you want to play out with me, just let me know, okay?
Okay, this is Sylvia, and I just wanted to invite those who haven't spoken yet to speak. And if you'd like to think of this as a personal invitation to Michael and Owner and Christina and Nathan Spivey and Jacqueline Ziegler and Rebecca Blanco and Pam and Jennifer Carley and Christina and Frank and all the others who came on the call, please, I hope you'll raise your hand. Thank you. Bye.
Even if you just want to hear, go.
Can you hear me, Sylvia? All right, I'm Michael in Northwest Montana, and I just really appreciate all of you and what we're doing here. The only thing I have to say is I appreciate this island of sanity, and I thank you all for that.
Thank you, Michael. A little nod to Meg Wheatley. 267 area code, you're up.
Howard Bailey. This is Howard Bailey from Philadelphia. Very interesting call. I think that one of the things we have is difficult to get our message honed. I was over in Totnes, and they're having some of the same problems that we have. You know, how do you get the message through? One theme that's coming across a lot is the idea of, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the idea of belonging and relationships. The relationship building is so important, but we have to be thinking in terms of a sustainable ascent plan, rather than worrying about the descent plan. That becomes very obvious, but if we think globally but act locally, we can get projects together that speak a language that we have to create a universal action kind of thing rather than talking about it. Because in my experience, in my community, I see that like when we were at the international conference over in London, we were all speaking English, but there were different accents, and I didn't understand what they were saying. And it was very subtle. It was just very subtle, but we had to change on right there, slow down, and choose our words more carefully. So I'm just saying that we're on the right track, in my opinion, but we need to follow through with what we're doing here. So this is not the end in itself. We need to get this process moving forward. Peace back.
Thank you. For our phone participants, *9 if you want to raise your hand, and we've got Alesa up next.
Hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I love the idea of bringing in people that are the low-hanging fruit, that 20% of people who are Bernie supporters. And I thought, what if we, instead of trying to get the message through to people, what if we bring people together to give each other the message? What if we had or created a council of people with, say, one representative from the People's Party, one representative from the Green Party, someone who's conservative, someone who's libertarian, and bring one of each together with a permaculture, with a permie, and someone from transition, and see what happens. Put them in a room together with an explicit goal of what do we all agree on about climate change or about social justice. And perhaps it's not up to us to come up with the answer so much as to create the environment that facilitates people having that chance to talk to the others that they normally wouldn't have that dialogue with. Hopefully that got through.
Got a lot of twinkles on that. I think that's a great idea. Let's see, Rebecca Blanco, you got it.
Okay, you can hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm very moved. I feel very inspired. I feel very inspired by Nils' question of how can we, and I'm paraphrasing, how can we have the transition movement's boundaries become so much more porous that we start to engage in the greater movement and really participate in what is really a natural life process, which is a systems perspective. I also want to say that Shaktari's question, what is the question that we're not asking? I think one of the questions that we're not asking is, what is the question that we're not asking? That is a dynamite question, and let's keep asking that question and kind of fleshing that out a bit. And also I'd like to say that, and I want to do this myself, is that as we keep talking about transition and everything else that we're involved in, that maybe we can watch our language and start to think and speak in ways that are not, that don't put the transition movement over here and that other movement over there and that other movement over here. We're working together for something that's transcends each and everybody's movement. And if we start opening our eyes to that, is transition political? But of course transition is political. I'm a therapist. I've always thought that what I do as a psychotherapist is absolutely political. And I have one person in my office, you know. So peace back. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Theo, and then echoing Sylvia's call, that if anyone out there who hasn't chimed in yet wants to even just say hello and let us know where you're calling from, please feel free to raise hand or make a comment in the chat and I'll call on you. Theo, you got it.
Sure. Yeah. So I love the idea that we're, the idea of like the low-hanging fruit. I think transition will be more powerful when it gets to be more able to engage with other movements. I think that's actually caused some of its decline, has been seeming like it's an isolated affair where, so it'd be great to figure out how to get transition to be political. The question I also want to return to is where is the line? I mean, I think that was one of the frame questions, and it sort of seems to be coming up that we would like to change where we think that line is and maybe erase it. C-SPAC.
Where's the line?
Could you elaborate a bit more on what you mean by where's the line?
Me or Thea? Thea, you want to work on it?
I'll take a crack again. So I think people have a traditional politeness to not talk about politics. You know, if you're, with people, it's kind of not quite rude, but a lot of transition meetings, we've left it off the table. Sometimes our group likes to talk politics too, but so I think, and a lot of institutions that are 501c3 are very like, oh no, we feel like reflexively don't talk about it. So I think it's important to make space to get into it consciously. And I think the movement has left a lot of power off the table by like letting the nitwits have the field while we like organize great protests in the street and do all this other amazing work while meantime, like never grabbing the gears. So, but in terms of where the line is, I mean, the question is like, do we want to make, transition about permaculture separately, or is there like a line somewhere on the beach? Thanks.
Yeah, how political do you see transition being? I mean, is this, again, there's so many local solutions that are happening that are easy to see as being non-political, even though I agree with Rebecca, everything fundamentally is political if we're creating, human change and having these, social impacts on each other. But the idea of like a gleaning project or a reskilling fair is not necessarily going to threaten anyone's political identity. Talking more explicitly about climate change might, and then talking even more explicitly about police brutality or immigrants' rights. Again, that's some of these things are the ones that create a little bit more potential division, and yet also engaging this stuff, at least for me as one human being, feels like a necessity. And how much do we human beings in transition do that explicitly? How much do we link that to transition? And then how much does the transition movement itself, our initiatives, and then also like our national and international organizations explicitly take these stands? I see Wilmington in transition, and anyone else feel free to raise your hand. *9 on your keypad.
Go. Hey, sorry about that. Our microphone operator took a powder for a moment. Couldn't unmute. I wanted to. I think one of the most interesting things that I've heard regarding the topic of this call tonight was put forth by Layla, because I think that's a really the either-or paradigm, or paradox of people kind of not, everybody's got a certain amount of available time that they feel they can or are willing to put into doing stuff, whether that's protesting or creating or convening or whatever. And I think it's really telling that in the Trumpian era, if you will, that people are maybe putting down, they're prioritizing protest because they feel there's more urgency to fight against a further encroachment or a further, slavery or, all these really big issues that we're looking at politically. So and I get that, like everybody's got limited bandwidth, so to speak. So how do we corral, my opinion is transition does need to be political. It needs to be a lot more political. I think we have to take the kid gloves off. We have to stand up. Like, I forgot who it was just talking, one of the recent speakers that said, you know, maybe it was Theo, that if we play nice and we let the dimwits run the show, you know, the people who are more of the same on steroids. We don't want, you know, extraction-based economics and upward transfer of wealth to very few, you know, on steroids. And if we let them keep making the decisions, then that's what happens. So I think we have to actively try to build the more beautiful world, co-create the more beautiful world that we know is possible, and model that and lead by example and invite everybody to participate. But at the same time, I think we have to say it's okay to do both. It's okay, you know, in terms of divisiveness, maybe what we need to do is just pick issues, sort of like one of the people who's talking about the 501c3, because that is a real concern also for those of us who are sponsored by other agencies or whatever that are 501c3s. How do we act locally? Maybe we need to get political at a very local level where it's safer, where it's you and your neighbors who could have different political views, all who agree that maybe a ban on plastic bags is a good idea. You know, the low-hanging fruit, the things that are local and that affect you locally, there might be more room for politicization of the larger movement if we start on issues that people can directly relate to instead of the big ideological stuff. But I think that Layla put her finger on the pulse. It's like, why are we not scaling up more successfully? Why don't we have the name recognition? It's because there's so many people trying to do so many things, and there's so many quote unquote fires to put out. And the system thinking is absolutely necessary to relate all these things. But why did the Movement for the People's Party not just take over the Green Party? If the Green Party is dysfunctional, we have the same platform. You know, why do we have to keep reinventing a million different wheels all trying to roll down the same track? You know, I don't know. Anyway, I think we need to try to engage the transition-minded in the world of politics, and I think we need to just start small. Peace back.
All right. See, we've got Ken and then Davey D. We're getting into the last 5 minutes of the official call. After we formally conclude at 6 p.m. Pacific, folks can still stay on and keep socializing, but we've got 5 minutes left before we bring this official call to a close. So yeah, Ken, you got it. I don't know if you're still there. Let me see. You can unmute yourself.
There we go.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? My apologies.
Gotcha.
I've done a lot of experimentation in Palm Beach, Florida. And really, I'm communications director for the League of Women's Voters of Palm Beach County. I run a 501c3. I'm involved with 501c4s, which are political entities. I've really tried to experiment. Like, I've gone to the Venus Project, which is just a couple hours from here. And it's quite fascinating to see people's conceptualizations of this. But once you're on the ground, really it comes down to building broad relationships and building alliances that, like the last person that spoke, she said, why didn't the Green Party get taken over? It's because they were organized enough to hold their own. And I think that that's really important, as we have to continually develop closer and stronger relationships with each other across the platforms Like the League of Women's Voters, they're a perfect example. They do not ever talk about a politician ever. We only talk about issues. That is to keep our 501c4 rating. We have to do that. 501c3, really you can't talk about politics because they'll pull your permit. And I work in both of those areas, but I'm very active in speaking my mind socially, social media, pretty fair amount of followings. And I think that there are positions in social media to leverage the existing groups and build platforms where you can connect with other transition-minded people. And I'm starting to find them more in Palm Beach, and we really have to reach out, find how to operate in that fashion in a positive way. That's really, my basic thought process is to continue to experiment. I think that that's the biggest issue, is that people sit back and stay in their individual spaces and not go out and get out of their comfort zone and meet new people and take the risks of standing up in front of someone that does not agree with you and not fight about it, but to try and find common ground. We all have to find common ground, and it's been harder than ever with this election cycle. And I think that we have to work extra hard to find a way to connect with someone who, even though it's beyond most of us in this room, how did they support Trump and what are the reasons for it? I mean, I'm 25 minutes from Mar-a-Lago, 15 minutes, and you see a lot of support and a lot of fighting against it, but you find very little people that are willing to walk the middle ground. And I think that's the most important part, is bringing people back together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Let's see, we've got Davey, Dee, and Laura, and we've got a couple minutes left, so if you'd be willing to keep these kind of pithy, short remarks, and we'll formally close and keep on hanging out to chat as long as you want after that. So go for it, Davey.
I'm just going to pass and let it go.
Dig you. Laura?
Hi. Just to say a couple of things about the Green Party and the Movement for a People's Party. What we're trying to put together is a broad coalition of groups and parties. We don't want the Green Party or the Socialist Party or any of those other groups to join and give up their identities. We want all of these groups to come together as a broad coalition. Once we have the support that we need, then it's practical to go file with all of our secretaries of state and call it a party. But to jump the gun and get right into electoral politics when we don't really have the support of all of the groups that we need could kill our movement, and we're not going to do that. So we're not interested in taking over any parties. We want parties to come together. And the strength of the Green Party platform is a huge piece. The platform that our members put together adds the economic piece. And that's what we're doing. So I hope that sounds like an open door, big tent idea that other people were referring to earlier.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for contributing your unique voices and your perspectives. I have a sense that this could go on for a long time, because after 2 hours of this, there's still 40 people on the call. And this is, 2 hours on a weeknight. So, props to all of us for being here, and everybody who spoke up. Thank you. Those who didn't, it's awesome even just knowing that you're here and having you here. In a moment, I'll just unmute everybody. And we can all continue sharing. Just a quick shout out for our online summit coming up on October 27th. Information about that at transitiongathering.org. This is going to appear on Transition US's YouTube channel in a couple of weeks, and it'll be posted on our website as a blog. I'll also share all the resources that came up in the chat. Let's see, do Shaktari, Theo, or Sylvia want to share any closing words? No? Got shaking heads. All right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to unmute everybody after that, but if you got something to say, dig it.
for me. Are you looking at me?
Yeah.
I think this call went off like a top, you know? You know, the power of getting the people together, it always amazes me, the sort of like the guy in mind build and really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Go for it, Shaktari. Rebecca, too.
I'm sorry, I wasn't going to say anything, and then I realized I want to make sure that we all get the chat along with this, the recording of this, because this is so rich, and I couldn't even keep track of it all. It was going on so quickly, so thank you. Can you, Nils, make sure that we do get all that?
Yes, I'll publish this as a blog. It might take a couple of weeks, but we'll get it out.
That's fine. Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Rebecca, inner transition goddess? No? Okay. I'm going to unmute everybody right now, and feel free to just you know, say hi, say bye, say whatever you want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Keep working.
Yeah.
Vote in November.
You guys are awesome.
Get into amateur radio.
Get back with all your campaigns.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck, Dan.
Have a good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. We're getting here to take care of each other. What the heck are we doing here?
Thank you.
Waiting for serenade.
So long, farewell.
And good night. Adieu.
Transition love. It's all y'all.
Thanks. Thank you.
Really cool to see Wilmington and Transition participating as a group. That's so cool.
We have a late arrival here. We got 5 of us. That's the best we could do tonight.
Yeah, you guys are great. Hope to meet you all soon.
More out there, though.
Yeah, I tried to get the other people to speak, but I wouldn't.
Just start.
At least.
Everyone.
Garuda.
Shall we log off and have our actual meeting now?
If it's quick. We can share our meeting.
This is our meeting.
We have to pay money.
Thanks, Rita.
I guess we shrunk quite a bit. There's only a couple of us now.
Yeah, our heads get bigger.
How does that go?
As the community shrinks, the individual heads get larger.
Oh, it was gorgeous. Beautiful, wonderful. How often are the calls?
Well, we're just bringing it back. They used to happen about quarterly. We're planning another one in November. That hopefully will be, we don't have a date for it yet, but actually Rob Hopkins, the Transition Towns founder, will be joining us for that one. So we'll be announcing that at the online summit. He's one of our keynote speakers there. So.
Super. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Glad to meet you.
Thank you for your question. I didn't get in, but I did want to say it was a good question.
Yeah, I caught your comment in the chat. Thanks for participating and being here.
Yeah, I didn't have. I was on the phone here. I didn't. I wasn't in the Zoom, so I didn't interact that way. But could I just make a quick comment?
Please.
Since I got coffee in there.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, great. So I mean, to answer your question, and of course it's not either or, it's both and. But time and season being the organizing context for when they engage and rest in one or the other. It occurred to me that a simple online directory that's organized by zip codes, listing all kinds of permaculture and political events, initiatives, and ongoing activities would be helpful for me. It could be as simple and worldwide as Craigslist, comprehensive and open source edit as Wikipedia. So anyone in the world could add, peace building events and groups in a simple format without gratuitous. without a lot of decoration and ads, and just say, okay, what's going on in a 50-mile or 100-mile radius of me this week? Anyway, that would be something attractive to me that I would add to my organization tools.
Just to clarify, are you just saying use Craigslist and use Wikipedia more as organizing tools?
No, but I like their simple nonsense approach. It's very it's highly complex, right? I mean, they're highly complex directories, encyclopedia, classified ads, and they're getting all kinds of categories, right? I mean, the sky's the limit. It's just the lexicon is the limit, whatever, but they're not, and like your call today, it's not crowding out any one of them. It's allowing for the categories to be well sorted. So, I would just go on to, maybe it needs a name, but let's call it Transitionpedia or whatever, just as a placeholder, and go on to it and say, this is, I can do that on a transition site and look on the map, but I find a pin drop in Decatur, Georgia. I'm in West Georgia, and there's just no way to get, there's nothing there. There was no presence, but if I put my zip code in and then allowed the range to expand, okay, there's, going on within 10 miles, let me go 50 miles, 100 miles, and then I can see what people have placed on the calendar, in Chattanooga, Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham, and then it would be also categorized not just by, it wouldn't be a lumped, everything lumped in the same thing. I can filter that by saying what are, some political engagements and what are some permaculture. I'm calling permaculture as a larger category, but whatever the culture type groups, some type of community gatherings that are non-political, for example. Anyhow, that would help in terms of giving me an organizational tool, but also allow me to just see what is, all the offerings that are out there, and would allow me to look in a list form to see all the different designations, the different fort designations, and at some point someone is going to have to would have to help to structure that. It couldn't all be open source. There would have to be some managers, but a lot of it could just be posted in properly designated categories. Anyhow, does that make sense? Not a lot of pictures and not a lot of but just links to real contact information and the what are the facts, ma'am, the time, the place, location, who's invited, sort of stuff, or what to expect, and then just small line items that I can browse through, filtering. It would be something as easy as Airbnb. This is what I'm looking for. I check some things, I filter things out, and this is what comes up. A little bit like or something. A lot of stuff comes up, and then okay, I want to narrow it down. Or not much stuff comes up, I want to broaden it out.
I feel that that's a beautiful vision. I would love for us to have the capacity to execute something like that. But I'm hearing you big time.
May I?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I go for it, Robert. And then I 703. I don't know. It looks like your hand's up. So I say, Phil, this is now just like.
I apologize. I came in late. I had a class to teach, so I wasn't able to attend and hear the entire webinar. But my question is, since I teach at university, is what types of student involvement has Transition been organizing, and is there a place for organizing university students? I think young people are the ones that really will gravitate towards this.
Yeah. I don't know if I have the answer to it, except to say that, a lot of members of the transition movement have brought the message to college, a little bit at least. I go, lecture at my local universities around here, Sonoma State and other ones in Northern California. And we've had some student volunteers and interns over the years, but it's been pretty minimal. We do have much intern offerings available for the youth. And then out there is a guide. It's on our website at transitionus.org. It's called How to Do Transition in a college or university or something. I'm getting the title wrong, but it's on. I think it should be on the guides page of our website, and it was published by Transition Network. But that's pretty new. It came out last year. It's a guide to doing transition on campus.
Great, I'll look for it. I also, in response to the last caller, put a link to the Land Institute here, since I'm in Kansas. The Land Institute is an amazing place. They have a prairie festival that's coming up here towards the end of the month. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Wes Jackson and the Land Institute, but that's a nerve center for bringing people together. It's called an intellectual hootenanny for the sustainable agriculture movement. It's an amazing place. I've met Wendell Berry, E.F. Schumacher, just a host of people over the years.
What is the institute? Can you spell that?
It's called the Land Institute, and I put a link in the chat window for you.
Oh yeah, phone callers can't see it, right? It's but it's landinstitute.org.
Yeah, tremendous resource.
Got it. Thank you.
And everyone's on 703. I don't know if you were trying to talk, but everyone's unmuted now, and you're welcome to this is totally informal. Feel free to share.
I would
All right. Hey, great. Really enjoyed it, guys. Appreciate it. Great show. Great show.
Yeah, dig you. Thanks for being here.
Are you also aware of the work of Rocky Mountain Institute, Amory Lovins, of course?
Not tuned into that.
Oh yeah, our Rocky Mountain Institute, Amory Lovins is amazing. Let me take the link for them. Should be.
Oh yeah, come on their website.
Yeah, they're huge.
Hi, Robert. Where do you teach at? Just curious.
University of Kansas.
Oh.
What's your subject area?
Educational technology.
Right.
And I'm moving into other things because I see more pressing problems of practice. I recently discovered this Years of Living Dangerously documentary that's been on. Have you seen that? Check it out on YouTube. It'll blow your mind. It's an amazing array of people talking about climate change, and oh my God, it's fabulous.
Ooh, yeah.
Years of Living Dangerously. Do a YouTube search. And
yeah, I see it here. This is great.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So anybody, I come, since I live in the blueberry and the tomato soup here in Kansas. Kansas is probably the most conservative place in the whole country. We have to try to have that Big Ten approach to, try to educate our fellow conservatives that, stewardship of planet and nature is, part of our deep tissue connections to what the real spirit of conservatism should be.
Yeah, yes, indeed.
I think embracing the open source and the maker movement is also crucial because when you think about it, the whole basis of America is kind of an open source experiment.
Sure. What's the best way to plug in with that?
Well, like opensource.org, it's basically all about peer-to-peer, crowdsourced improvement. There's open source cryptocurrencies. Solar Coin is a cryptocurrency that's based on solar megawatt electrical generation, which is can't be anything but good. And I think it's important too not to get hung up on just climate change because all the natural systems are in such a state of attack and decline. The ocean acidification and the coral bleaching and dead zones and plastic, gyres.
It's all related, Jim.
Yeah. We could fix climate change and we would still have all these other, pounds at the door.
That's right.
But
Years of Living Dangerously is amazing. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really an amazing resource. National Geographic has taken out over the last couple series. It was the first season 1 was a 9-part series, and So it's quite an extensive conversation. But it connects a lot of dots.
That's a YouTube freebie, you said, right?
I've seen it on YouTube. Yeah.
Get it before gets taken down, probably, right?
No, they've got it all on their website too. You could watch it all free. It's theyearsproject.com.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they've got it all. This is great. YouTube videos are direct embeds.
Kind of really gives you an update on situational awareness of what's going on globally, because you have people that are traveling all over the world showing what the current situations are that they're dealing with.
That's great. No, you're talking about educational technology. I'm a high school teacher, and this feels like something I want to bring into my classroom. Actually, this is great.
Yeah. I've had to shift the problem of practice that I'm dealing with to this is the big problem of practice, that everything else pales in comparison. I don't like to wax apocalyptic, but it's very hard to deal with young people and create a vision of a positive future. And I think that's where if there's a path to change, that's it's young people that will have to become advocates for their future.
Yes, sir. Well, family, I gotta go rescue my pup. I'm gonna stop the recording, but I think when I leave the room, I'll have an opportunity to keep the call active. So if you want to keep interacting with each other, the line will stay open. But I gotta bow out. I'd love to stay in touch. If you want to keep in touch, I can put my info in the chat.
That would be excellent.
Nils at transitionus.org. Always glad to be in touch.
Yeah. Are you also kind of involved with the distribution of the book, Surviving the Future?
Yeah, well, we did have a bunch of those at one point that we used them as premiums for some crowdfunding, and Chelsea Green Publishing had shared a bunch of copies of those with reading groups. So we sent boxes of Surviving the Future to, I don't know how many people exactly. It probably ended up being a couple 100 people.
I got one. Yeah.
I
gave it to a couple of state legislators. And the lead guitar player for the band Toto, Steve Lukather.
All right.
Surprisingly, is very interested in that. So, they travel the world as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Blessing the reins.
That's right. But yeah, it's a real challenge. A lot of things.
What science or subject do you teach in high school there, Nils?
I'm teaching high school social science and civics, government, econ, history, social sciences, all that. And it's you mentioned ed tech, but it's a private school that's run by a nonprofit, and it's very technology intensive and very learner focused, individualized education. It's really sweet.
Oh yeah, STEAM is the big buzzword these days. Science, technology, engineering, and art, math. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping to put together the amateur radio community and the permaculture community, as well as the space colonization community. So it's kind of a weird partnership. But I'm in Thousand Oaks, so I'm thinking of having the Thousand Earths project.
Ooh.
But
I'm an aspiring. My pops was a ham, and I've just got a study guide so I could become a ham radio operator. But you got a recommendation on a good starter level radio?
Well, the Baofeng Chinese made radios are just for what they do, for the money you can't beat it. I mean, I paid $200 for this Yaesu FT60. It's a bulletproof radio. It hasn't really changed design in the last 15 years. But the Baofengs, if they fall off the roof of your car or something, you're not going to cry about it because they're, $50 on eBay all day long. And I think they're just a little bit, they have their quirks, but, you can't beat them for the money. And yeah, the question pool for the entry-level ham test it's only 50 multiple choice questions. There's a website called Ham Test Online. permaculture.com, where you can kind of do a flashcard cram for it. Just look up the local ARRL chapter, and it's like $15, And the question pool was just updated in, I think, July 24th, and should be good for like a few years. They update them every few years. But I got tested all the way to extra class just by, cramming online tests. I mean, I feel like I kind of test memorized to get that. But I wanted to, my next goal is to get my permaculture design certificate, because, I can't really espouse this project I want to do until I've got the highest grade credential, in each subject there. So,
well, if that journey happens to bring you up to Northern California, be glad to hear from you.
Yeah, whereabouts are you in NoCal?
Santa Rosa, Sebastopol.
Ah, okay. So you didn't get burned out?
Pretty close. No, I did get displaced by a wildfire 3 years ago in Lake County, California. But I moved here. Fires have happened here. Transition US is actually physically based at a place called the Permaculture Skills Center in Sebastopol. So we're like on a little, permaculture oasis. Pretty awesome.
Oh, wow. What do you guys charge for a PDC certificate?
We don't actually operate them. I mean, there are permaculture folks around, but I can't speak to how much they're costing or anything. I was just at the Permaculture Convergence yesterday up in Hopland, the North American Permaculture Convergence. It's roughly around the fall equinox every year.
Oh, great. Wow. Yeah. What's the city where it was?
I was in Hopland, California.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. It must be up in Lake County somewhere.
Yeah, it's up in the North Wine Country, Mendocino County. It was pretty great. There was like 500, maybe 600 or 700 even permaculture people from around the country that showed up for this.
Wow.
So you guys are all in California, huh? Very nice. Yeah, I taught at San Jose State for a while, and then spent about 8 years at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey. So I envy you. Although I fear that you're running out of water rapidly.
Yeah, feel that.
Well, you've got that giant New Madrid fault earthquake to contend with in Kansas, right?
That's further east.
Further east? Okay.
Missouri, right?
We have fracking earthquakes here that are caused by fracking.
Yeah. What nonsense.
Pretty interesting.
I used to do environmental groundwater testing, and we're testing for like parts per billion of benzene, and here these frackers are like pumping benzene wholesale into the water table as part of the fracking fluid. And it's just
they want to frack the Monterey Shale. When you think about the seismic sensitivity of that area, what would happen with the whole Salinas Valley aquifer being polluted. It's like, geez, what a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting economics to stop getting their externalities unpriced for free is going to be a way that left and right can really converge, because especially the whole land question, people can own a piece of land and just monopolize it and landlord it over it for, indefinitely. It's like, I thought Bucky Fuller had coined the term spaceship Earth, but it was actually Henry George back in 1879 in the book Progress and Poverty. He said, although I think he called it a spacecraft, but spacecraft Earth, spaceship Earth. But he said, what if a hatch opened and you suddenly said, "Oh, I own that hatch"? That's really that wouldn't be fair on a spaceship.
The property rights dilemma is really crazy. It was really brought home by a cattle feedlot that was here in east of Abilene, Kansas, in this area called the Sand Hills. It was the most amazingly pristine aquifer, and they raised cattle on it. They polluted the entire aquifer, and the whole city of Abilene, Kansas had to find an alternative water source. And so there you have one family whose property rights, led to that kind of an impact. So
that's pollution is aggression. That's a meme that's kind of sweeping the libertarian world. Running kind of as a geo-libertarian, because that's like the whole Henry George land value tax thing. I think it's like Moses, and it's Adam Smith and Karl Marx agreed on it. Einstein, all these great minds in history have said this is the way to do real estate property. And it still isn't, getting done anywhere, but there might be ways to do it, like with land trusts or 99-year leases, or I really think that would be a great, political convergence, because there's people all across the political spectrum. I mean, how much more opposite spectrum can you get than Karl Marx and Adam Smith agreeing on something?
Yeah, it's a wild dichotomy.
And then I mentioned this book I got from the library, Unstoppable, Ralph Nader.
Ralph is great.
Yeah, it's there's Grover Norquist is in here recommending it. He's like about as hardcore right as you can get. So.
Well, that's the essential challenge, is how do you bring, if you get a 50-50 split between the liberal and the conservative wings of maps of reality, how do you bring them together?
Yeah, well, the problem is, the internet has been just an echo chamber. It's created these, silos of audiences that just talk to each other and get more and more insular in their opinions. It was supposed to be a great, teaching tool like television, I guess, but that hope sort of fizzled, apparently.
Yeah, the echo chamber is really dangerous. It's interesting. The Department of Defense has created a whole department called the Department of Mimetic Warfare, in recognition of the psychological ops potential of social media. So.
Yeah, well, look at how the Russians weaponized it in the last election.
Well, the United States has mastered the craft of psyops, so we just got the blowback.
That's a good point.
As if we haven't intervened in Russian elections.
The mimetic chickens have come home to roost, right?
But it gets back to, once again, how do you educate people when people have very poor critical thinking skills and are poorly educated, and they're subject to these kinds of insane logic bubbles.
Yeah, well, even Socrates said, the only good is knowledge and the only evil is, willful ignorance.
Yeah, we have a lot of that. So there's no shortage for challenges for educator, are there now?
Yeah. Well, my mom was a 4th grade teacher for a year before she became a housewife, but she was very beloved by her Long Beach students there. But I mean, we don't pay teachers enough, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So are you guys permaculture certified, or thinking about it? Or
I grew up with, I met Wes Jackson when I was in 7th grade. I was at a science festival, and Clyde Tombaugh, the discoverer of the planet Pluto, speaking to the local college, and I asked him a question when I was in 7th grade. Do you think you could tell the relative age of a galaxy by its definition, the tighter packing of its spiral formation? So Wes Jackson came up and introduced himself to me and asked me to kind of look him up. So Wes Jackson, I don't know if you've heard of him, but in terms of permaculture, he is one of the real founders of appropriate technology. He started the first environmental studies program at Cal State Sacramento back in the 60s, and then founded the Land Institute here in Kansas. And their focus has been to try to develop a sustainable perennial grain crop. Very interesting research. But over the years, he said, the annual Prairie Festival, it's been a who's who of people that have come through. Like I said, Wendell Berry, John Todd, Francis Moore LePay, E.F. Schumacher, they all came to Salina, Kansas.
The old guy I'm taking care of went to Stanford with Schumacher.
Yeah.
Home care aid. That's getting like free trading room and board for home care.
Yeah.
Robert, the Wes Jackson and Wendell Berry, those are names. Their writings are very familiar to me. When you said the Land Institute, I couldn't hear it through the phone line, but after the third time I got it, and I Googled it. It comes up. I was making the comment about making a very simple user directory, and I love how Google is blue and there's a little green and black, and they got a little thumbnail, the Land Institute, and all, what comes out is, I learned very quickly that it's based in Salinas, Kansas. It was founded a day and a year before I was born. August 1st, 1976 was when it was founded. I was August 7th, 1977. It's just so easy for me to get so much information and to connect on that. And then what would be helpful is for me to say, so I'm in West Georgia. What kind of things like this are happening around me? And, that users have posted, contributed, and have been moderated for content, based on some simple community rules. But then things would come up in Georgia or Alabama, or this is not a very rich hotbed for these kind of things. It's not California. But
what I've observed is that, and this is why I ask about student involvement at universities, is because I've noticed that a lot of university towns, so like Lawrence, Kansas, for example, I came back to Lawrence. Lawrence has got a pretty active group of people that are sensitized to these issues. So you might start by searching, some of your university towns like Athens, Georgia, and some
went to school there, and I'm in a university town. What I'm saying is not everyone is plugged into the universities, and so it'd be good to have a very basic, something that anyone can use. And that's why I was using examples like Craigslist, something that's so pervasive. And then who was the moderator tonight? I came on late. What was his name? Anyhow,
Is it me, Nils?
Oh yeah, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm hanging.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What's your name?
My name is Nils Palsson.
Yeah, Nils. I lost my thread now. Nils, let me ask you. I had to take a call in the middle. Someone was talking about an eHarmony, so I don't know if he was suggesting this, but you mentioned, or you asked, are you suggesting using Craigslist? Well, yeah, we could use Craigslist. I mean, if the structure's there, but it would just be something that would be easy to search and say, well, I'm here now. What is going to be near soon that I can plug into, and just to increase my awareness of groups and start to thicken the networks around these sort of things, because there are a lot of groups around everywhere. There are people doing this kind of thing. It's just how do you start making binders and directories so that when it's the time of the season for someone to say, okay, I would like to get involved again. I had to take a break. Let me get plugged back in. And that's not, when you're looking up Craigslist or eBay or whatever, and you want to buy something, you don't have to look very far. It just brings up lots of options. So anyhow, I don't know if that's developed or half baked, but it's the kind of thing that I like when I get on line and look for lists. The call that I got tonight was someone calling me back from our voter protection hotline. It's a Democratic organized for voter information hotline, basically. And I was looking for how to search poll locations for people who are going to register at our event this coming Saturday. Georgia has a portal that allows you to see where your poll is if you're already registered. But if you're getting registered, and if you're registering, it will, when you finish entering the information, it'll say, you're not registered yet, but you'll get a card in the mail telling your precinct your poll location. But I feel like that information should be in a directory, and Ohio has it, and I'm sure other states. I've found that just Googling Georgia doesn't have that. So we need to have a simple directory so that people can plug in with the internet. It's very simple, and see what's happening around them. When I lived in Vancouver, I didn't have it was in the air, it was in the water, and I think that's the case in California. We do have Windleberry in Kentucky, but that's a little far too. So try to thicken the network here. What are your thoughts? Anyone have thoughts on that?
There's a great directory at, I posted the link on the chat, permacultureglobal.org. It's got like tens of thousands of people with map stick pins and a description of what kind of permaculture project they're working on. And I think there's enough crossover between what we're talking about and the permaculture universe that, you know, we could kind of hijack that or skate along with it, you know, with a little bit of creative massaging of our projects.
Okay. Well, I'm here, so I'm going to look for, how would I search for something near me?
If the website's kind of, I think you just put your zip code in, and it uses it all as the filter. It's kind of self-explanatory. I found a couple permaculture people within, I think, 10 miles of me in Santa Barbara and Simi Valley.
Okay. Do I have to sign up? I'm not seeing a search for zip code.
Yeah, you might have to create a login.
Actually, I found it. I think it's under people. There's a directory here, and it's good. It's very simple. It's got a photograph and basic information of people.
Yeah,
Maps.
it's like perma-harmony.
Is this what the person was talking about with the eHarmony?
I think it's close enough that, you know, we could save reinventing the programming wheel.
Yeah, no reason to reinvent it. I agree. Thank you. I want to step back and explore this side a little bit. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, much appreciation, you guys. I'm going to hop off at this moment. I think the call will not be